lujos, carros y su gente y apellidos.
Hello everyone, welcome back. This is part 2 of our Waejma series. And before we jump into Semana Santa or Holy Week, I want to do a reflection on what we covered in part 1 of our series. So in our last video, we talked about what Waejma is, not just one weekend, but an entire season where we walk with the passion, the death, and the resurrection of Jesucristo, Jesus Christ, which we do this in a very Yaqui way. We talked about how Waejma isn't something we watch, it's something that we carry. It's a manda, or a vow, and it takes a lot of physical and spiritual discipline. We also went over Ash Wednesday, also called Neposawa, as the beginning of that obligation when the feeling of all the pueblos start to change and the costumbres vows become active. And we also talked about the Friday Contis and how the story tightens week by week. And then Palm Sunday, with blessed branches, green life, and that tension of knowing what's coming. So now in this video, we're stepping into the part where everything intensifies, which is Semana Santa, or Holy Week. And just like last time, I do want to say clearly that I'm only sharing what I've been taught and what's written from communities like Pascua. I'm also sharing the words from my elders, as well as from my own experience, my friends' experience, and the stories in which they have shared. So I'm also not going to be showing any photos or videos of our ceremonies, and I'm not trying to teach anyone how to do our ceremonies. I'm just describing these things in a general way, with respect, and I also encourage you who are listening, or if you may be Yaqui, to learn from your own elders and your family and the maestros and everyone else within your community, because each pueblo and even each family does things in their own way. Also, I want to note that with the timings on some things, they're not always exact. Some parts have a thing saying that they start around this hour, but in real life, you kind of just have to wait for things, as each pueblo and every church does things at their own timing and in their own rhythm. So let's talk about Holy Week, or Semana Santa, for from our Waejma perspective, which we're going to be talking about Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Sabado de Gloria, or Saturday of Glory, and then our final video of this series will be on Easter, the Aleluya. So, Holy Thursday, it remembers the Last Supper and the arrest of Jesus in the garden. And for us, that night is one of the most dramatic parts of Waejma. By the time evening comes, the costumbre has already marched and the chapayecas are ready. A garden is built near the church, usually with fresh branches, like a leafy enclosure. That garden is symbolic. It represents the place where Jesus prays and where he is arrested. And you'll notice something too, that from here forward, the soundscape changes. You'll hear the wooden clapper calling people, and it's kind of got that dry, hard sound that feels like morning. And it's all part of Holy Week. So Pilate and the Fariseo officers send out spies, which are chapayecas, to look for him. One will come back with a twig from the garden, and without saying much, he answers Pilate with gestures. So, did you see him? Are you sure? Can we overtake him? And Pilate threatens them, and if they lie, their heads will be cut off. It is very dramatic, but it also echoes that fear that they all carried throughout the season, the idea that at the Gloria, they will lose their heads if they did not serve right. Then the Cotumbre marches forward toward the garden. The Chapayecas slash the air with their swords. Pilate strikes the ground 3 times with his lance and calls out, "Who do you seek?" From inside the garden, the sacristan answers for Christ, a Jesús Nazareno, and then comes the response, "Yo soy," or "I am he." And that call and response happens 3 times as the lines move closer. And on the last exchange, there's that gospel memory, if you seek me, let these others go. Then the garden is surrounded, and the chapayecas throw themselves around it, howling like animals and birds, and they tear it down. And now here's an important moment. The capitan, the captain of the caballeros, goes into the fallen branches, puts a horsehair rope around the Nazarene, so Jesus, and hands that rope to a chapayeca. And then people explain this differently, but the meaning that comes through this is that the caballeros don't want to be the ones who capture Jesus. They pass that responsibility onto the chapayecas. And after that, four chapayecas lift the litter with the Nazarene, and one walks in front, holding the rope, and the procession forms. So, angeles, angels, flag girls, and girl angels, and the maestros and altar women, and all the people, pretty much. The chapayecas beat time with their swords, and the maestros sing alabanzas, which are songs like Lloren Pecadores, so weeping for the passion and the death of our Lord. And then inside the church, one chapayeca stays as a guard. He holds the rope and his dagger, and he does a quiet, subdued moment like a guarded dance, almost kind of nervous, I'd say. He peers around like he's seeing the inside of the church up close for the first time. He touches cloth, candles, garments, and when holy names are spoken, you see him flinch and shake. He's brave and scared at the same time. And every half hour or so, the guard changes. The old guard teaches the new guard with the pantomime, how to hold the rope, and not to drink, not to sleep, because if he fails, he loses his head. They even say they even pass the rope back to back, which is left hand to left hand, if I remember correctly, and their faces are turned away. And meanwhile, everyone settles in for the night. The flag girls and angels curl up on carpets. Altar women sleep near the altar or go home for blankets. Maestros will lie down fully clothed. And the whole night is a mix of deep silence and coughing and snoring, and also prayers. And sometimes you'll have a dog just barking in the background. And outside, men of the costumbre are sleeping around the fire. Hail sometimes could happen. And the rosary kind of continues throughout the cold hours of the night. And so that's kind of Holy Thursday. So I'd say in one word, it's pretty much a watch. So not just staying up, but also keeping presence with Christ in prison. And then we move into Good Friday. So on Good Friday, the mood changes again. The sun feels harsh, the sky feels hard. Women wear dark clothing and usually no jewelry. Many older women tend to let their hair down as a sign of mourning, and the virgin figures are draped in black. Angels wear crowns of fresh cottonwood leaves, and fariseos wear their black shirts, and pilates wear long black capes. And then inside the church, there's a brown burlap curtain hanging, or that will be hung just a few feet in front of the altar. And the Nazarene stands before that curtain with the caballero lances crossed in front of him. The cross and the crown of thorns are placed back on his image. And around midday, people are called with the wooden clapper and the fariseo drum. And outside, the chapayecas are nervous and explosive. They sharpen swords, peek into the church, tease the altar women and angels, but they still shiver when they get too close to holy things. And a flower carpet is laid in front of the Nazarene. When the procession begins, which is symbolizing the crucifixion, the church group comes out, and it's similar to the fifth Friday of Lent, but now the Chapayecas have full possession of the Nazarene, and at each station of the Way of the Cross, prayers are said. And then at Calvary, the final station of the Way of the Cross, um, the cross is lowered, and the head altar woman throws confetti over it. Flag girls wave their flags over the four arms of the cross. Caballeros and then fariseo flag bearers step forward with hats off, sign themselves, and circle their flags. And then Pilate follows, making crosses with his lance, tapping the ground 3 times, and a chapayeca comes forward with a small hammer and guided by a corporal, and pretends to hammer nails into the feet and each arm, and he uses his left hand and strikes it 3 times at each spot, um, which that's pretty much the symbolic way of doing the crucifixion of Jesus. And when it finishes, you get a kind of terrible, I guess, victory feeling. Flags waving and chapayecas jumping and swords flying. And after this, the way cross is moved aside. Men of the pueblo take the Nazarene from the chapayecas. The rope is returned to the caballero capitan, and later comes the symbolic lancing, where Pilate advances into the church closer and closer to the cross and makes that motion, and where um, and then what's it called? Sorry. And people say that that's the moment that he pretty much kills Christ or Jesus. And after that, the Pharisees run around the way of the cross like they're trying to escape the storms and the earthquakes that follow in the story. Then comes one of the most sacred parts, which is the veneration of the dead Christ. So the holy men gently take him down and lay him on a coverlet and sheet with a pillow under his head. Confetti is showered over him. Angels and flag girls stand barefoot with candles. People bring flowers, coins, and candles. Um, and it's pretty much quiet. Group after group comes forward. Each person is touched on the head with the small cross on top of the flag, and the flag is drawn over the face. Men come in pairs, holding right hands, kneeling 3 times. Heads are all the way to the ground, and people remove shoes, hats, belts, and even glasses. Chapayecas strip off their regalia and come as ordinary men. And even outside the chapayecas, mischief changes. They might still play with toys or mix up shoes, but just softer. Like something in them knows that this is the most sacred hour. And after everyone has venerated, the body of Christ is lifted into the bier, surrounded by candles and flowers, and then taken around the stations one last time, and which is pretty much the journey to the tomb. And that night pretty much becomes another vigil. And there's what's it called? There's a detail that people talk about, that the chapayecas guarding the beer, um, what's it called? Sorry. The chapayecas are guarding the beer and a toy or a teddy bear, and secretly replacing the figures so later that they can discover that he escaped. And then pretty much Good Friday ends pretty quiet. Um, Tends to end with, a bunch of prayers, alabanzas, songs, and just kind of watching everything happen. And then sometime around midnight between Friday and Saturday, there's a procession many people call el encuentro, which is the meeting. So in the Yaqui language, some say, I'm going to try to pronounce it as best as I can. My Yaqui is not the best, but emonankiwame, which means like they meet each other. And then here, the risen Christ is represented by the infant Jesus, El Niño, not the crucified Nazarene. And a lot of people explain it like this, that when Jesus rises, he returns in the same innocent form he came into the world, which is as a little child. And the way of the cross leads, boy angels follow with their godmothers. El Nino is carried under a canopy. Maestros and singers follow, singing the misere. Then the girl flag bearers and girl angels. Then the three Marys. At the first station, the procession divides. The men group goes one way, the women's group goes the opposite way, and each has chapayecas with them. And you really feel that turning, two paths circling, grief and joy moving toward each other. And as the two groups approach, the Chapayecas rush ahead and pretend to fight. Cat pistols, swords, confusion, like soldiers at the tomb, angry because their plan failed. And then when the procession meets, or yeah, the flags wave to El Nino, the three Marys bow, the Nino bows, and confetti falls. Some people say this is the moment of the resurrection or the light of resurrection when Mary realizes her son is alive. And after that comes the Chapayeca Fiesta, which is a noisy, wrong way procession. They're offbeat in the music, exaggerated dancing, pretending to drink from anything. It's both funny, but the meaning is pretty sharp. It's sin and mockery, lost Christ, and now that ones who harmed him are headed toward their punishment at the Gloria. And inside the church, though altar women and the flag girls are still working all night, dressing the three Marys in bright new clothes, decorating the altar, and preparing the flip from mourning to glory. And then we move into Sabado de Gloria, or Saturday of Glory. Um, so by dawn, maestros begin their morning alabanzas again. Hot coals are brought in to warm the people who slept inside. And then outside, the fariseos march alone without the caballeros, three times around the church cross and around the way of the cross, stamping at each station to wake up the crosses laid down on Friday. And people called this kusim busane, walking or waking the sleeping crosses. And then the caballeros join for dawn prayers and return to headquarters. The rest of the morning is pretty much just pure preparation. The church is cleaned, rugs are shaken, the brown curtains hung over the entrance so nobody can see inside. The beer is brought in. The big church cross is moved into the plaza entrance, and a post is set for Judas. And then the Chapayacas make the Loria Bo'o, so the glory road, lining the path with cottonwood branches. And across the plaza, they lay a straight line of ashes. So Naposa Wiki, or no, Naposa Wikteki, and marking the Santo Tebat, so the holy boundary. And the ash line becomes a spiritual border, because when the Gloria hits, the line is where everything changes. Then late morning, the Chapayacas bring out Judas. They pretty much like bring him out life size. He's stuffed with rags and sticks, dressed in old Chapayeca clothing. They parade him in a wrong way procession. They kiss him, dance with him, and people interpret that different ways, like punishment or honoring him, opposite as their leader before he's destroyed. The plaza fills. Women bring sewam, so flowers and confetti, and those become bullets of light that will strike the fariseos. And angels stand ready with switches. Matachinis prepare. Pascolas arrive. The dare dancer pretty much stands ready, and the whole pueblo is building toward one sound, which is the Gloria. And then the warnings come. Coreum aviso, and the fariseos refuse, and everyone waits. When the Gloria starts in the Mass and the bells ring for the first time since Thursday, rockets explode in the sky, and the fariseos break into a run, the Loria Marcha. the Glory March, and pretty much they're marching toward the church, and then they hit the ash line and they run into a wall of flowers, dancing, switches, and sound. The Gloria happens in runs, and each run hits harder until pretty much the last one, which is when they throw down everything, regalia, their belts, swords, sandals, everything. Um, Judas then burns, fireworks pop, paint and cloth go up in smoke, and people throw flowers into the fire like bullets aimed at evil. Jurasta Yahwa, so the burning of Judas. And inside, godparents do what some call a rebaptism, but more accurately a mute, a rededication, rosaries, crosses traced, vows closing, and then men come out no longer fariseo or chapayeca, they're just men again, and cleaned of the role that they have carried throughout the season. And then that's the turning point. After the Gloria, evil is conquered, and the rest is thanksgiving, joy, and closing vows properly. And then after the Gloria, there's a procession taking the infant Jesus to the Fiesta Ramada for Loria Pahko, the Glory Fiesta. Matachinis lead, and then Pascolas, the deer, and their managers go in front for El Nino, and boy angels and godparents follow, and the infant Jesus is carried under a white canopy. And sometimes other small images join too. Then the three Marys and the women's group. And at the Ramada, El Nino is bowed to the altar. Short prayers are said, and then the fiesta continues. Pascualas and the deer dancing throughout the afternoon and pretty much all through the night. And families start to visit food booths, kids start running around, people are pretty much just coming and going. And I do want to say clearly, even though it feels like a fiesta, it's still all part of ceremony, and that's why certain closings don't happen yet. Later in the evening, Matachinis do what's called the maypole dance, which is ribbons weaving and unweaving, and the maypole is lashed to the church cross, and so it pretty much stands all night receiving prayers and alabanzas, so songs. And that's where I'm gonna stop for this video, because we're gonna have Easter or Aleluya as its own video, because it deserves pretty much its own little space. So thank you for watching and listening. I hope you all stay protected and safe during this time, as I know it is really hard right now. If you are celebrating Waejma and Semana Santa and Easter, may you all be blessed. Even if you're not, may you still be blessed by Itomachai, our Father. And so have a great day. Get some food, get some water, get some rest, and take care of yourselves. Toalias and chimoko tesiabu in liasapo en chimak. Chocolat.
Après, faudra se rappeler, on verra après, faudra se rappeler. Faut pas